What's going on, Warriors? Welcome back to another Guild Wars 2 Warrior build video. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, but I felt like I really needed to do one since the last balance patch, and I think I have a good idea for what to do this time. So this build is called the Supportive Soldier video, or the Soldier Support, something like that. I think I like Supportive Soldier. Anyways, so this build focuses on the strengths of the balance patch, and basically the last balance patch for Warriors, it really buffed up our defensive abilities. Alright, and of course I like to make Spellbreaker stuff, so of course this is a Spellbreaker video, Spellbreaker build, but I'm gonna show you exactly what the build is all about. So first of all, let's get into gear. Alright, and gear is going to actually be Harriers, alright? This is going to be Harriers gear, which is power, healing power, and concentration. I've done, I think I did a build of like the Hornbreaker or something like that, where it was like a Warhorn Spellbreaker or something like that. This is a little bit different, okay, because it's been affected by the balance patch. So, I'm going to go over exactly why I choose certain things. First of all, Harriers is because this is going to focus on support and healing, and what better things to have in your support and healing build than healing power and concentration for extra boon duration. Those definitely would be good choices. Those are definitely just be good, it's just a good stat combination. Now, I was not able to achieve that for all of my gear, just because it's very expensive just to have so many different stat sets for every single weapon, but for most of it I got it right, and it's enough to give you an idea of about how the build is supposed to work. So we've got Harriers gear, which is power, healing power, and concentration. For our weapons, we've got Mace and Warhorn. Of course, they're going to be Harriers as well, but then also a secondary weapon, you've got two choices. You can either go with the hammer, or you can go with the shield, alright? And then of course the back items, or the back item and the rings and the accessories, they're all going to be Harriers in the end as well. Again, I wasn't able to get all the stuff in Harriers and stuff like that, and some of them is just like power, precision, toughness, concentration. I think that's commanders actually. But anyway, so we've got those stats, primarily power, concentration, and healing power. Okay, then for runes on our armor, we've got Runes of Dwayna, which is going to give us extra healing and extra regeneration duration. And regeneration duration is quite important because you are able to actually... Well, I can't remember where it comes from. I could be wrong about this, but there's some way to get regeneration on your allies, or maybe it's on yourself or something like that. But either way, you do get actual regeneration plus like from the actual runes. So don't worry about that. When you're struck, you can gain regeneration for 10 seconds, 25% chance, and then also when you use a healing skill, you and all nearby allies gain regeneration for 5 seconds. So that's also very, very useful. The cooldown is 10 seconds, but don't worry about that. Anyway. So, going on to the traits, I'm going to explain everything. First of all, we've got Defense, Tactics, and Spellbreaker. And I'm going to go over my exact reasoning for these choices, and of course some alternatives if I see fit. Yes, Dogged March. Okay, so Dogged March is something that's going to give you regeneration, which is, of course is affected by your concentration, which you're getting from gear, and then it's also affected by your Runes of Dwayna, which is going to increase specifically your regeneration duration. So whenever you're affected by one of these conditions, then first of all, it gets decreased duration, but also you get regeneration. And then you can also very easily remove these conditions, which we'll get into later. An alternative would be if you wanted to use a shield as your secondary weapon. You could choose Shield Master, which of course is going to increase your effectiveness with blocking and things like that. So that would definitely be good. But the next one, well, of course, Adrenal Health. Adrenal Health is just so good. But then the next one is Sundering Mace, and the reason for that is that Mace is the primary weapon, And the reason the reason that mace is a primary weapon here is that the mace trait is in defense, and we already need defense for a different trait, which we'll get into in a second. So it's just good to have your weapon being affected by your trait. It reduces the cooldown on the skills, so that's good. You could choose Defy Pain. If you're having trouble with survivability, you could choose Defy Pain. If you don't really need to do as much damage, you don't really need as much control or whatever, you just need to survive so that you can support your allies, you could choose Defy Pain. It's going to increase your survivability. But I've got Sundering Mace. And lastly, we've got Last Stand, which increases the duration of your your stances. Stouts. I'm mixed up between shouts and stances. Anyway, this increases your duration of your stances, and also gives you vigor when you activate a stance. So, and of course, it's affected by your concentration. So it's giving you 8 seconds of vigor, which is kind of crazy. So, and Last Stand also, it kind of makes you immune to your first knockdown. You know, it has a 40 second cooldown, which is kind of crazy, but still, it's a stun break, and it gives you stability and all that. So, there you go. Next, we've got Tactics, and the first one is Quick Breathing, and I really honestly love to play Warhorn Warrior. It's just so fun playing such a supportive role. And this allows it to be even better. Alright, first of all, this allows you to play Warhorn Warrior in a more like crowded environment as far as allies go, because instead of having only 5 targets, your Warhorn skills have 10 targets. It also gives you adrenaline for each person that they affect, and it reduces the recharge. Now, the most important part of that is that it reduces the recharge, because now Warhorn skills basically remove, like, all of the conditions. So it's not really so important, you know, to have this just for condition removal, but the recharge reduction is super important, because that means you can remove conditions more often and all of that stuff. So, after that, we've got Shake It Off. Shake It Off! Alright, and this is actually really important. There is an alternative where you could take Empower Allies if you don't really have an issue with conditions, because, I mean, you've got the Warhorn, so you've got plenty of condition removal, and you've also got Shake It Off as a skill, but it is a shout. We've taken the trait for shouts, so it heals you, it gives adrenaline, and removes 1 condition from all nearby targets. That's always good. But if you don't really need that, then of course you could choose Empower Allies, and Empower Allies is definitely a huge bonus. So, your choice. I've got Shake It Off. You could choose Empower Allies. And lastly, we have Vigorous Shouts, which means that all of your shouts are going to be healing you, they give you adrenaline, and it reduces the recharge. This is very important, because you're not going to be getting that much adrenaline with this, and you do need the adrenaline for the adrenal health and whatnot. So you do need adrenaline, and all that healing, by the way, is affected by your healing power, which is in your gear. A lot of it is in your gear. So, very important. The other ones don't really strike me as anything super important, so pretty much Vigorous Shouts is the one that you want to go with here. And lastly, Spellbreaker, and I'm using Spellbreaker primarily for the boon removal, and also the full counter, of course. So, basically, the full counter is going to allow you to be more defensive. The boon removal is like offensive defense, which is a form of support. If your enemies have a lot of might or whatever, you remove that, then they're going to be hurting your allies less. It gives you less of a job of healing your allies. So, that's primarily why we use Spellbreaker. As far as the traits go, you could definitely go with No Escape if you wanted to immobilize them. Pure Strike you probably wouldn't want to go for, just because this build is really not focused too much on damage. But I went with Guard Counter because it allows you to get protection after your full counter. I just really like that. Next we've got Slow Counter, and you could definitely do Loss Aversion, because since you have a mace, it's got 2 control skills, which will definitely remove boons, and if you've got Loss Aversion, that's just an extra bit of damage. And again, this build is not really too focused around damage, but if your enemy has a lot of boons and you're also taking shield and hammer and stuff like that, then you could definitely do a ton more. Much more than just pure strike, because that's increasing your critical damage, but you don't have any extra critical chance because you've got power, concentration, and healing power. So your critical hits don't really mean anything because you can't achieve them very much. They're kind of insignificant. But the Loss Aversion definitely could, you could make the case for Loss Aversion. But I got slow counter because, again, it's offensive defense. Any conditions that affect your enemy in a negative way and kind of impede their ability to do harm to your allies, that's defense. So I think that's really important. So I've got slow counter, and lastly, I've got revenge counter. You could do Magebane Tether to give yourself might, or you could do enchantment collapse if you want to remove tons and tons of boons. But I've got revenge counter, and that's for copying conditions, increasing the damage, and then finally giving you resistance. So that being said, let's get into the skills really quickly. Alright, we've got the mace skills. The most important thing about the mace skills is that there's first of all, there's a block. Second of all, there are 2 control skills. There's a daze, a 1 second daze, and a 1 second stun. The Warhorn skills are important because they changed charge so much. Okay, charge and call to arms. They just made it so good. Okay, first of all, look at this duration of this boon, by the way, swiftness. You're going to have a longer boon duration if you've got full Harrier's gear. But look at this duration, 13 1/4 seconds. Look at the recharge, 12 seconds. You can have permanent swiftness with this. And not only that, removes crippled, immobilized, chilled, torment, and burning. 5 different conditions that you can remove on 10 targets. And if all 10 targets have all 5 of those conditions, that's giving you a maximum of 50 adrenaline just for this skill. That is not OP because it does take a little bit to actually achieve that. But you can just achieve a full bar of adrenaline, especially as a Spellbreaker. You only need 20 adrenaline to get the maximum effect out of your adrenaline. It's just very, very good, and it's just so good. Anyway, so the next one is Call to Arms. Now, you can't maintain permanent vigor with this, but you can almost maintain permanent vigor. And then it also removes weakness, vulnerability, slow, poison, and confusion. Now, it does not remove taunt, and it does not remove fear. Those are 2 conditions that are completely immune to these 2 skills. But we also have ways of removing those, and we'll get into that later. So, again, it affects 10 targets, you gain adrenaline, all that business. And don't forget that you're also applying those boons to nearby allies. So especially that's helpful in fractals and stuff. Maybe when you guys all need to dodge a lot, the vigor allows you to make a lot more mistakes, and it provides forgiveness for a lot more mistakes. Next, for our healing skill, we've got Defiant Stance. The reason why is that they changed the base duration from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. So now with the trait, you've got 5-second Defiant Stance. All incoming attacks heal you. If it would have killed you, it will now bring you up to full health. It just heals you for the exact same amount that it would have hurt you instead. In addition, you get the initial self-heal. It's a very tiny initial self-heal. I think it's actually the smallest. I think it is. Yeah, it's even smaller than Healing Signet. So it is by far the smallest self-heal. But the actual Defiant Stance part of it is the most important part of it. And keep in mind, you do have other ways of healing yourself because of the shouts. Okay, you've also got other 2,174 heals. Remember, it's going to be bigger for you if you have more healing power. Anyway, but the cool thing about Defiant Stance is that the actual effect, Defiant Stance, is not affected by healing power, so it's always going to heal you by the amount that it would have otherwise hurt you. No matter how high or low your healing power is. Good skill. And it's been made much, much better in the balance patch. Next, we've got Endure Pain. You could instead, if you wanted, you could take Balance Stance if you want that extra swiftness. You don't need it because you've got a Warhorn that allows for permanent swiftness. But you might need the stability because even though Endure Pain is a stun break, Balance Stance is going to keep you balanced for 5 seconds. And actually it's a 5 1/4 second No, it's actually going to be a little bit longer than that. It's actually going to be about 6 1/4 second, I think, because it's every single second it's applying 1 1/4 seconds of stability. So you end up getting the total effect, I believe, for 6 1/4 second. So there's that. But I'm taking Endure Pain because that way you can just shake off any damage. And speaking of shaking things off, we've got Shake It Off, which has been buffed. I don't think it was buffed in this patch. Was it buffed in this patch? Yes, it was, because it now uses ammunition and with 5 seconds between activations, and then you have a 25-second ammunition recharge time. So, now in PvP, it's actually really interesting, because in PvP this actually removes 6 conditions, but it has a 50-second recharge instead of a 25-second recharge. So kind of interesting. It's like you can use it fewer times, not as often, but it's a bigger effect. Now this does heal you. Remember, this heals you and nearby allies. It cures conditions, 3 conditions on you and nearby allies. It grants you adrenaline, and it, what is it? It's also a group stun break, which is crazy. So, a very, very powerful skill that you will definitely need. For Great Justice is the next one I have. You could definitely switch to On My Mark, because On My Mark also uses ammunition. Let me see, where was I? Yeah, On My Mark also uses ammunition. It just takes a little bit longer for each count to recharge. But it applies vulnerability and revealed instead of granting your allies fury and might. So keep that in mind. Now you can maintain permanent might, by the way, because with 4 Great Justice you've got 33 1/4 seconds of might, 6 stacks, but it only takes 20 seconds for that crap to recharge. So you can definitely get like 12 stacks on someone and just keep waiting and keep using it on recharge. I always forget to use it always on recharge, but it's there. And you could definitely keep up with it. On My Mark is more for if you've got plenty of might, plenty of fury and everything, and your group really just needs some extra vulnerability, because vulnerability is a little bit harder to come by nowadays, so it could definitely help you. Technically you could use Fear Me. I really don't like that because it just applies weakness, and it's got such a huge cooldown. I think it's just too huge to even be worth it. So I really think Fear Me is kind of like a horrible skill for warriors. I think it's one of the worst skills for warriors overall. But anyway, so we've got into the build. Oh yeah, Signet of Rage is the other thing. It's just, I couldn't really find the best one for this. You really could use any of these. Any of these would be fine. Probably not Rampage. Probably that one would be the worst one. You could use it, but I don't think it would really be the best. But I think Signet of Rage just works. It's for boons. It gives you boons, and you also gain adrenaline and whatnot. So that being said, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to test this. And guys, keep in mind this is not really going to get to showcase exactly what this build is all about, because this build is going to be primarily based around condition removal, right? Condition removal and supporting allies. So because of that, you're not really going to see what this build is all about. But as you can see, it's got very high survivability, you know. We've got Endure Pain, right? We just do this, we can stun a lot. So there you go. That's basically what this is all about, but again, it's not really showcasing exactly what the build is meant for. So you're gonna have to like test it in some other environments. But I was requested by Shem to make a fun warrior build, and I had exactly this one in mind when I first saw the balance patch come out. So I really think this is a good build, and I think that you guys could have a lot of fun with this. I mean, it's not gonna be meta, but it's something that that might be actually fun to play. And at the end of the day, you know, if it's fun to play, then who even cares if it's meta? If you can achieve the same things with it, you know, do Shake It Off, right? You have some conditions, you shake them off, and you heal the damage that they've done, basically. Look, they're dealing some damage to you, and you heal the damage that they've done. So, that's a demonstration of this build. Guys, if you enjoyed this build, please feel free to leave a like, subscribe, join the Discord server that is in the description below. Thank you so much to Shem and Luke for being my Patreon supporters. It helps out so much, and if you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, please feel free to click the link in the description. Usually I stream Hearts of Iron 4 nowadays, but I do occasionally have to come back to Guild Wars 2 to make fun warrior builds. That being said, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.